Chromebooks may be most popular in the classroom, but Google wants to ride that train out of schools and into the next phase of students' lives. The Pixelbook is the manifestation of that idea, the piece of hardware that combines Google's revamped design aesthetic and internet-based software with the needs and wants of a younger generation. Google stopped selling the original Chromebook Pixel, but seemingly only because the company wants to shine the spotlight on its new Chrome OS laptop. No distractions, no other potentially cheaper options if you're someone who grew up using Chrome OS in school. This $999 convertible is the one you should get if you want to continue using Chrome OS later in life. In 2012, Chromebooks accounted for less than 1% of laptops shipped to schools around the country. In 2017, Chromebooks make up more than half of the mobile devices shipped to schools. 5 years isn't a long time to make such strides, and that may end up being good for Google in the long run but bad for Pixelbook right now. Is the Pixelbook ahead of its time? Most signs point to yes. Look and feel, there's nothing generic about the Pixelbook's design, and it's certainly cut from the same cloth as the Pixel 2 smartphone. The Pixelbook has a sturdy aluminum chassis with a satin finish and one large white glass panel on the lid. This is where the wireless signal come in and out, and it's mirrored by a white rubbery strip that wraps around the chassis, just below the keyboard and on either side of the trackpad. This rubber material not only gives the Pixelbook some grip when placed on a slippery surface, it makes the palm rests more comfortable spaces on which to rest your hands while typing. Specs at a glance. Google Pixelbook has reviewed screen 12.3 2400 by 1600 235 pixels per inch QHD LCD touchscreen. OS Chrome OS CPU Intel Core Y57 RAM 8GB HDD 256GB SSD GPU Intel HD Graphics 615 Networking 802.11 APNIAC 2x2 MIMO Dual Band 2.4 GHz 5.0 GHz, Bluetooth 4.2 ports, 2 USB Type-C ports, charging, 4K display out, data transfer, headphone jack, size 11.4 in by 8.7 in by 0.4 in, weight 2.4 pounds, battery 41 Wh, warranty 1 year, starting price $999, price as reviewed $1,199, other perks 720p webcam, Pixelbook pen not included, extra $99. The 12.3-inch 2400 by 1600 LCD touch display has wider bezels around it than I'm used to seeing on high-end convertibles, but it does help you grip the device when in tablet mode. The Pixelbook can convert into the typical two unknown modes, including laptop, tablet, and entertainment mode, with the keyboard flipped underneath the device. Those rubbery palm rests come in handy in that mode, stabilizing the device so that it doesn't move as easily. The edges of the Pixelbook's chassis have a scanned few ports, one USB Type-C port on either side that both support charging, and the left side has a headphone jack, volume rocker, and power button. Inside the Pixelbook are 4 far-field mics that listen to your questions and commands directed to the Google Assistant. With that many internal mics, you should be able to speak to the Google Assistant from across the room. Noticeably missing from the internals are fans. The Pixelbook is a fanless convertible, no matter which configuration you get. Our model is the mid-tier configuration, with a Core i5 processor, 8GB of RAM, and 256GB of storage. Even the higher-tier Core i7 model doesn't need fans to run, making the Pixelbook super quiet even during our most rigorous benchmark tests. The Pixelbook configurations start with 128GB of storage, which is much more than most Chromebooks have. As someone who has used Chromebooks in the past, I immediately saw this as overkill. But Google thinks a lot of storage is necessary even for an internet-dependent device like the Pixelbook. In our testing, not only does a large amount of onboard storage improve overall performance, but it also allows users to download larger files and programs like movies from Netflix or games from the Google Play Store. The premise makes sense if you compare it to buying a tablet. Unless you plan on only using the tab while connected to the internet, streaming anything and everything, you'll need a decent amount of storage to support the tablet's OS, all your necessary apps, any photos you take, and any temporary files downloaded over Wi-Fi. The Pixelbook also aims to compete with regular Ultrabooks in the $999 and above price range, so it would be remiss of Google to not include high storage capacity options. With its metallic and white aesthetic and its 10mm thickness, the Pixelbook looks more like decor for an ultra-minimalist. It nods to the clean, mostly white, picture-perfect desk setups found in YouTube office tour videos, and Google isn't shy about the fact that those who watch office tours are the ones who want to buy the Pixelbook. An entire generation of youth grew up and continues to grow using Chromebooks as educational tools in the schools. Google sees the Pixelbook as the grown-up or maybe glow-up version of those devices, a high-end, beautiful laptop that Chrome OS kids will want when it comes time for them to buy their own laptops. But even if Google got the aesthetic part right, there are still a number of things this $999 two-in-one doesn't have that the other, similarly priced devices do. The Pixelbook doesn't have a fingerprint reader, and while it does have a webcam, it doesn't have an IR camera for facial recognition. Recent MacBook Pro models have fingerprint readers, and Windows devices have both of these hardware solutions that make login more secure and convenient. I would have settled for a fingerprint reader at the very least because a $999 device seems out of place without one. The Pixelbook doesn't have a true desktop interface and can't run regular programs either, both fundamental conditions of Chrome OS that are considered flaws or freedoms, depending on who you talk to. The Pixelbook pen, the convertible's main accessory, also costs $99 in addition to the price of the notebook itself. This makes it much like the $99 Apple Pencil, and it's a bummer that you have to pay extra for what is essentially a Wacom-esque stylus. Google Pixelbook with its aluminum and white body. Subtle Google logo at the top corner of the lid. The 12.3-inch QHD display has large bezels around it for better grip in tablet mode. New circular launch button next to standard dock of Google Apps. Hinge allows the Pixelbook to lie flat on a table. White, rubber-like palm rests provide cushion for typing hands. A look at the hinge from above. One edge with a headphone jack and one of the two USB Type-C ports. Pixelbook folded into entertainment mode. Pixelbook folded into tent mode. Keyboard, trackpad, and Pixelbook pen. The Pixelbook's keyboard is one of the best I've used in a while. The key travel is quite shallow at 0.8mm, but the layout doesn't feel cramped, and I rarely hit a wrong key at my regular typing pace. I love the slight texture of the keys. They're coated in a matte finish, giving them a slightly smoother feel than the rubbery palm rests. Typing is clicky and satisfying, and as a lover of every shade of grey, I like the look of stone grey keys atop the Pixelbook's shinier, silver chassis. The keyboard is also backlit, automatically glowing when the device senses a low-light environment. This is a good addition on Google's part because so few Chromebooks have backlit keyboards, and where'd expect one on such a high-end device. Being a Google-made Chromebook, the Pixelbook's keyboard has a few unique keys. The caps lock key has been replaced by the launch key with a circular icon on it, which brings up the new app dock where you can open recently closed apps and quickly search through your device, apps, and the web. In between the Control and Alt keys is the Google Assistant key that brings up a window with similar dimensions to a smartphone's screen, and this pop-up holds the Google Assistant. With that window open, you can type a question, a command for the Assistant to answer. More on the pros and cons of the Google Assistant on the Pixelbook in a bit. At the top right corner is a hamburger-esque key that opens up the settings window at the bottom right corner of the display. Here you can quickly access your Google account, turn on or off Wi-Fi and Bluetooth controls, and access advanced settings. I don't miss the caps lock key at all, as I've never been the type of person to emphasize my emotions in text or Slack messages using all caps. I prefer GIFs. The launch key came in handy frequently when I needed to open a new program or access an app I closed by accident. I didn't use the Google Assistant button that often, but that's because I could say "OK Google" while using the Pixelbook to open the same window. It likely use the button more when I'm working in a coffee shop or other public space in which it might be frowned upon to bark orders at a laptop screen. Let's talk about the Pixelbook pen. The $99 accessory is fatter than regular pens or pencils and shares the same silver and white color scheme as the Pixelbook itself. According to Google, the pen has just a 10 milliseconds lag, 60 degrees of angular measurement, and 2000 levels of pressure sensitivity. It doesn't need to pair via Bluetooth with a Pixelbook to work, rather it works like a Wacom stylus and runs on AAA battery. As a writing tool, the Pixelbook pen is average. I've tested styluses with low latency. The Apple Pencil falls into that category, so while Google's is not the worst, it's not the best either. The pen's API bypasses layers of Chrome OS, and Google claims this lets the pen's input show up directly on the screen without anything impeding it. However, I saw variations depending on the app I used. Writing notes with the pen in Google Keep is a quick, responsive experience with little to no latency. However, you feel each of those painful 10 milliseconds of lag time while sketching in Adobe Draw. I also don't appreciate that there's no way to keep the pen with the Pixelbook. The pen isn't magnetic, nor is there a sleeve on the Pixelbook to hold the pen when you're not using it. You'll have to spend even more money on a sleeve or other case, like the Bilroy Pixelbook sleeve, to get any kind of pen management. The pen's single side button isn't even raised enough to stop it from rolling off. A flat surface. I almost lost my pen in the slim gap between my desk and the wall plenty of times. A staple on the Pixelbook's bottom menu bar is the pen's array of options. Capturing a portion of the screen, creating a note is as simple as tapping twice, and there are tools that turn the pen's tip into a laser point to a magnifying glass. However, the most unique feature of the Pixelbook pen is the Assistant Power, accessible via the side button. Pressing and holding the side button while drawing a shape around something on the Pixelbook's display lets you use the Google Assistant to bring up more information about whatever you've selected. You can also draw a line through words, essentially highlighting them to search for the definition, among other use cases. Aside from being a pen-controlled dictionary, this pen feature is particularly useful for image search. I scrolled through dozens of exotic travel photos on Pinterest and used the Draw search tool to ask Google Assistant to find out where each photo was taken. Recognizable monuments like the Eiffel Tower and places like Santorini, Greece were a breeze for the Assistant, and it even identified more obscure photos. I was fascinated by one image of a town street filled with colorful umbrellas seemingly floating in midair, and the Assistant quickly identified it as Portugal's famous Umbrella Street. Every once in a while the Assistant did trip up, and I received an "I can't find anything on your screen, I can help with" alert. Sometimes the Assistant just didn't know anything about what I circled. It seemed to identify images that include a bit of text the best. Listing image by Valentina Palladino. Page 2 launch key replaces caps lock, and the Google Assistant key sits in between Control and Alt keys. The pen isn't magnetic, and there's no real way to keep it close to the Pixelbook. The Google Assistant interface looks like it was plucked from the Pixel 2 and plopped into Chrome OS on the Pixelbook. Google representatives told us that Chrome OS will launch third-party apps in a window sized for the device for which they were first made, so an Android app primarily for smartphones will launch in a smartphone-sized window. It seems Google treats the Assistant interface in the same way, although unlike Android app windows, you can't adjust the size of the Assistant's window. It always pops up from the bottom left corner of the display, just above the on-screen circular launch button. The Assistant window shows a reverse chronological timeline of your Assistant requests, with your most recent question right above the text input bar and older requests fading away into white above it. This lets you scroll through past questions, which could come in handy if you wanted to reference information from an earlier interaction with the Assistant. Since the Pixelbook is the first PC to have the Google Assistant built in, I had to shift my thinking to interact with it. Until now, the Google Home and Pixel phones were the only homes for the Google Assistant, so I had to treat the Pixelbook as I would one of those other devices. I'm used to interacting with virtual assistants in smart home speakers, so thinking of the Pixelbook as a two-in-one with most of the features of a Google Home was unique and somewhat challenging at times. For example, the Google Home is meant to make playing music throughout your home easier. The Pixelbook can do that too, with help from the Google Assistant. Saying "OK Google, play the Chill Instrumental Beats playlist" from Spotify quickly opens up the Spotify app on the Pixelbook and turns on my requested playlist. However, the Pixelbook speakers aren't the best for filling an entire apartment with sound. I would much rather use the same command with a Google Home to get a better music playing experience. And if I wanted to play the same playlist while working outside my apartment, I would simply navigate to the Spotify app rather than saying the command in a crowded, shared workspace. One of my favorite interactions with the Google Assistant is "Good morning, Google," which prompts the assistant to tell you a snapshot of the day. This was one of my favorite interactions with Alexa on the original Amazon Echo, too. It'll read the current time, weather conditions in your area, and the latest news from your preferred outlets. These can be customized in the Google Assistant settings, found by tapping the blue icon at the top right corner of the Assistant window, then tapping the three-dot menu icon and navigating to Settings. There are a ton of news sources available to add to your list, including snippets from NPR, Bloomberg, CNN, and the New York Times. I usually listen to the Times podcast The Daily each morning, so it's convenient to have it as an option to add to my news queue along with other audible news briefings that I don't listen to as frequently. Google Assistant on the Pixelbook works well as a shortcut to Google Search, too. Whether you speak or type a command, the answer comes from Google, and the Assistant's window provides the option to open up Google in Chrome to see more than just the top search result. It's as convenient as having a Google extension at the top of your browser, and this solution has a more personal touch thanks to the Assistant's AI and integration with your personal accounts. As a Google device, the Pixelbook has a few ways to search Google in addition to the Assistant. The other easily accessible way to search is a bar at the top of the app drawer visible by pressing the launch key or tapping the circular launch icon at the bottom left corner of the display. I chose to type "say queries" depending on what the query was. When I was curious about the upcoming weekend's weather, it was much easier and quicker to say, "Hey Google, what's the weather on Saturday?" than it was to navigate to AccuWeather.com and type in my current city. However, I generally typed out more complicated requests, like troubleshooting an issue with my MacBook Air or translating a phrase into Italian to send to my aunt over Facebook Messenger. Overall, virtual assistants like Google's are most practical when you don't have the entire internet literally at your fingertips. Anything I'm pondering while working on the Pixelbook could easily be answered by typing my thoughts into Google or another website that takes mere seconds to get to. On a laptop, a device that's built to search the web as efficiently as possible, the generalized features of the Assistant aren't as useful or convenient as they are when using it through a totally hands-free device like the Google Home. The Assistant features I used the most on the Pixelbook were those that integrated with my personal accounts and borrowed from Google's general knowledge of me as a user. Creepy, but true. A small setback of the Google Assistant on the Pixelbook is that it only hears voice commands when the device is powered on and the screen is on as well. That means you can't ask the Assistant a question when the Pixelbook is idly sitting on your desk with the screen off. It's unclear if Google will expand this capability in the future, adding the ability to use the OK Google command to wake up a sleeping display and ask a question would be a great improvement. It's also irritating that the Google Assistant doesn't integrate with G Suite yet. I could never ask the Assistant to tell me what's on my schedule for the day because all of my important meetings and events are on my work calendar. The Assistant can only relay details of your personal Google account, making it essentially useless for those who save their entire lives on a Suite-controlled work account. There is a roundabout way to enable some Google Assistant features for certain aspects of a G Suite account, but agenda and calendar integrations are not supported yet. Until they are, I don't see how any employee using G Suite can effectively use the Pixelbook as the primary work device. Chrome OS with more than a dash of Android. I had a lot of hope for Chrome OS after seeing Android apps executed fairly well on the $549 Samsung Chromebook Pro. After using the Pixelbook, I have an even more optimistic outlook. Many of my most used apps work better on Chrome OS now than ever before, and reportedly that's because companies are taking Android apps on Chrome OS more seriously. Google representatives told me that many companies are eager to reach the generation of young users who grew up using Chrome OS in schools, and one of the best and most convenient ways to do that is to optimize an existing Android app for Google's desktop OS. This strategy is key to the Pixelbook's success over time. Part of what Google wants to do with the two are known as bridge the gap between what you do with your smartphone and what you do with your laptop. Most of us grab one device over the other, depending on the task at hand. Need to check Instagram? Grab your smartphone. Need to edit a video? You'll probably go to your laptop. With younger generations embracing mobile apps as the first digital programs to do anything and everything, Google sees an opportunity to show those individuals that you can take any task, big or small, and complete it on the Pixelbook. Google only somewhat succeeded in that effort. Some apps traditionally used more on mobile run on Chrome OS, but the experience isn't great. Take Instagram. I rarely check Instagram from anywhere but my smartphone, but you can download the Android app to Chrome OS. It launches in a smartphone-sized window and looks exactly like the app does on mobile. However, scrolling with the Pixelbook's trackpad is hit or miss. Often I couldn't scroll at all upon launching the app unless I used my finger on the touchscreen to do so. There's also some pixelation around the caption text, which makes you feel like there's something wrong with your eyes when looking at it. When expanded to full screen, the Instagram window retains its aspect ratio, using only the middle third of the screen and leaving two gaping black spaces on either side of it. It's a mobile experience stretched for Chrome OS, and it's buggy at best. On the flip side, Twitter's Android app on Chrome OS effectively marries the design of its regular mobile app and its website. The feed, search, notifications, and private message icons sit at the top of the page, and the main feed of tweets fills up most of the page when expanded to full screen. Scrolling with the trackpad works just as well as if you were scrolling on a web page, and every composition option, adding GIFs, polls, etc. is available to you as well. Window management is a big issue on Chromebooks, particularly with Android apps, and it has certainly gotten better over time. Managing and resizing Android app windows continues to get better, even if you still get an alert saying this application needs to restart to resize and may not work well when resized before changing the original window size of an Android app. More Android apps are also getting support for keyboard and mouse input, so Chromebook users don't have to rely on touch input when in less touch-friendly modes like laptop mode. Even if you can use Android apps on the Pixelbook like you would on your Android smartphone, that doesn't mean you'll want to, depending on how optimized your favorite apps are for the Chrome OS platform. The same goes for the Android app versions of full-fledged PC programs, since most of them are not nearly as robust as the PC counterparts. But again, things are getting better. A good example is Adobe Lightroom CC, which surprisingly works just as well on Chrome OS as it does on my MacBook Air. Both the Android app and the Mac program are laid out similarly, with the editing menu along the right side of the window and the rest of the screen filled with the photo you are currently editing. There weren't any differences in abilities between the two programs, and I almost preferred using Adobe's selection tool with the Pixelbook pen over a traditional trackpad and mouse, because I could zero in better on the areas of the photo I wanted to change. One issue with Lightroom CC isn't caused by Adobe, but rather Chrome OS itself. The only folder recognizable by Lightroom CC as a place to upload photo files from is the Downloads folder. However, any photos saved on the device in Chrome OS Images folder will also show up in Lightroom CC. It's a confusing dialog choice that Adobe made, but you should see any photos saved locally on the Pixelbook in Lightroom CC. Ironically, the only place you can manually save photos on Chrome OS is the Downloads folder, as it's the current root directory for the operating system. I had to move any photos saved in zip files into Downloads before I could access them in Lightroom CC. This all boils down to the issue of file management, which is simultaneously understandable and irritating since Chrome OS doesn't have a traditional desktop or comprehensive file system. Google hasn't been shy about the fact that it has worked closely with Adobe to optimize its Android apps for Chrome OS. But maybe you don't pay for any Adobe CC programs. Even the Android apps require a paid account to use all of the features, and you want to edit photos in another program. I downloaded Pixel, a popular photo editing app in the Play Store, and an alternative option when I searched for Photoshop. Clearly, Pixel hasn't worked as closely with Google as Adobe has, because its app is barely optimized for Chrome OS. The full screen mode grays out most of the display and keeps the Pixel editor's smartphone-like dimensions, and it forces you into portrait mode. It does not and will not rotate to landscape in full screen mode. Oddly enough, any portrait-oriented photos upload into Pixel in landscape mode, and you must use the rotate tool to flip them to the proper orientation. The controls are similar to Adobe Photoshop Express, but they are clearly meant for those uploading to Instagram or Facebook than anywhere else. It's possible that Google's presumed Pixelbook customer is more comfortable editing in Pixel over Lightroom CC, but that doesn't change the fact that the experience using Pixel on a Pixelbook isn't good. While it's promising that Google is working with developers to help turn the mobile apps into laptop programs, the company and all Android developers serious about Chrome OS still have a long way to go. On a different note, there's one feature rolling out soon that's exclusively for Pixelbook and Pixel smartphone users: instant tethering. The Pixelbook will automatically recognize your Pixel phone's LTE service as a connectivity option. If you're out in an area where Wi-Fi isn't available, the Pixelbook will ask you if you want to connect to your Pixel smartphone's LTE service so you can connect to the internet on your convertible. Most smartphone users can turn the device into a hotspot that feeds off their LTE service, but instant tethering removes those first few steps of connecting your PC to your smartphone. It's a shame all Android smartphones won't have this ability with the Pixelbook, but Google obviously wants to reserve some cool features for its hardware diehards. Google representatives would not say if more Pixelbook exclusive features are in the works, but it'd be willing to bet that the list of Pixel-specific features will increase over time. Google also added support for native printing so the Pixelbook can more easily find and connect to your home printer. Google Cloud Print was the primary method of printing with a Chromebook before, but now you can connect to a printer on the same wireless network as the Pixelbook in a few seconds. It only took my Pixelbook about 30 seconds to recognize and connect to my office printer, and I didn't have to download any printer software to finish the setup. Page 3. Our mid-range Pixelbook runs on an Intel Core i57 processor, Intel HD graphics, 615 8GB of RAM, and 256GB of storage. It stood up well to other Windows machines with similar internals in our performance benchmarks, although its Geekbench compute score was abysmal in comparison. I expected the Pixelbook to perform well on our browser-based benchmarks since Chrome OS is an operating system based on the Chrome browser. Accordingly, I rarely experienced any hiccups while using the Pixelbook. Web browsing with multiple tabs was a breeze, and using laborious apps like Lightroom CC was a good experience. The Pixelbook could only run a couple of GFX graphics benchmark tests using the Android app, and its scores were only decent in comparison to similar Windows devices. However, the Pixelbook truly lagged in storage speed compared to other Android smartphones and tablets, particularly the new Pixel 2 XL. Battery life: Google estimates the Pixelbook will last about 10 hours before it needs recharging, and our test results prove that to be mostly true. The Pixelbook lasted 563 minutes, or about 9.5 hours, on our default Wi-Fi test. On our graphics-intensive test, it lasted 307 minutes, at just about 5 hours. A fate resting on the shoulders of others. Google's Pixelbook is a niche device. Google knows that and is almost embracing it. The company has emphasized the Pixelbook as an ideal choice for young adults, those just graduating high school or college and in need of a device that speaks their preferred mobile-first language. However, even if that young audience is ready for a world that blurs the line between mobile and PC, neither the rest of the world nor Chrome OS is ready to support it. I can say that Google got the hardware right. The Pixelbook is a stunning two-in-one that's a pleasure to use. It's light both physically and aesthetically, modern, and supremely Google, making it instantly recognizable among the slew of other high-end laptops available today. The touchscreen is lovely and responsive, and the keyboard is comfortable and integrates Google's unique keys without imposing too much change. While I wish the pen was included in the expensive price tag, I would probably shell out the extra $100 for it. Each time I test out a Chromebook, I get a little more faith in the marriage of Chrome OS and Android. The Google Assistant adds to that experience, although it's most helpful when retrieving personal information or connected information based on your personal accounts. Considering many Chromebooks had the OK Google command well before Google Assistant was introduced, many of the general voice-controlled assistant features are not new to Chrome OS users. However, Chrome OS with Android apps does not replicate a traditional PC or Mac experience on the Pixelbook. Google may argue it's not trying to do that, rather it's trying to make an entirely new laptop experience that relies on mobile apps optimized for larger-scale use. That would be intriguing if the experience was consistent, but Android apps on Chrome OS are far from consistent right now. Those inconsistencies aren't entirely Google's fault, either. Ultimately, the fate of the Pixelbook and future high-end Chromebooks rests with developers. Chrome OS only gets stronger when developers make their Android apps better for laptop use or develop entirely different versions of existing programs optimized for Chrome OS. While some companies like Adobe are clearly invested in this, it's unclear if the majority of Android developers, big and small, care enough to do this. When you buy a laptop, you're buying its hardware and software. Chrome OS is still too limited to warrant $999 or more. It's great on more affordable devices, but one must examine what you're truly getting for your $1,000. You don't need Chrome OS to live in Google World. You can use Chrome, Gmail, Google Docs, and every other Google application available on a Windows or Mac device. The Pixelbook's added value is Chrome OS, the Google Assistant, and Android apps. Individually, those three things may be intriguing, but the experience of using them all stuffed into the Pixelbook remains a work in progress. The good minimalist modern design, comfortable backlit keyboard, Pixelbook pen's use of the Google Assistant is clever. Android apps on Chrome OS continue to improve, albeit slowly. Google Assistant is at its best when delivering personalized information. Good battery life. The bad pen costs an extra $99. Pen latency not consistent throughout different apps. Nowhere to store pen on, in, or around Pixelbook. Voice commands only work when device and screen are on. Google Assistant lacks G Suite agenda and calendar integration. The best Android apps on Chrome OS are those made by companies that collaborate with Google. The ugly, quite expensive for a still limited device.